next guest, Parashat, please introduce yourself.
Hello. How you guys doing? Yeah, I was thinking about it as well. I should probably be a host, right? Since you're, I could hear the chatter behind. I was like, should we do like a job switch? You come do mine, and I'll do yours.
I don't think you'll want me talking about stack. Well, actually, I've talked to you about StackSets so many times by now. I'm probably I'm getting up close to expert level, maybe even just from our conversations.
I was gonna say you could probably take mine, but then if you threw me in yours, yeah, no.
Well, welcome back to the show, Parasite. It's always lovely to have you here with us, and we're going to be talking latest and greatest with StackSets. This is really the feature. We were talking about it ahead of time, obviously, because a lot of people. I'm giving away the behind the scenes. We plan these. It's wild. It's crazy. We actually like meet with the people and talk about these. I know. It seems like we probably don't.
Live. How much live is it? We'll never know.
That's right. I don't want to pull back the curtain too much, but yeah. So we were talking about this feature, and it's incredibly what a quality of life improvement it is. I'm so excited to hear more about it. We're going to be talking about being able to skip suspended accounts when running StackSets. But before we get into the actual feature, Parajat, you know the drill here. You've been here before. Yeah. We got to talk about what StackSets are in relation to CloudFormation. I mean, CloudFormation, I'll give that. Infrastructure is code, so you can declaratively write out your infrastructure and then have it reliably run against the CloudFormation engine and deployed out to AWS through a template that you can then treat like you do your other code assets, right? So there's my less than 30-second pitch on that. But where do StackSets fall into that, Parajat? What is that a feature of CloudFormation for?
Oh, that's actually an excellent description, Am. But before I move to StackSets, let's talk about CloudFormation a bit, right? Why do I even need CloudFormation, or why do I need this whole declarative way of doing infrastructure, right? So CloudFormation is one of the core offerings when it comes to infrastructure as code. And what I mean by that is, as a customer, if I'm trying to deploy certain resources like an EC2 instance or perhaps a DynamoDB, there are many ways I can do that, right? I can go to the console and click on a button and get that deployed, or perhaps I could go to my SDK and do it through an API. But where CloudFormation really comes into the picture, right, is if I have a pretty fairly complex infrastructure and I want to deploy it in some sort of an way with certain orchestration logic, right? How do I now codify that kind of a logic? And CloudFormation provides a pretty declarative format of JSON and YAML to do that. But back to your question on where the StackSet comes into this picture, right? So I have, let's say, a CloudFormation stack, which is a bunch of resources that I'm deploying to one single account and region. What if I really want to deploy it at scale, right? If I want to deploy it to an organization unit, to a bunch of accounts in a bunch of region, that's where StackSets really comes into picture, right? So what StackSet really does is that you have a singular CloudFormation template or a stack, right? And we kind of go and blast that stack out, right? Across the entire across your entire target accounts that you're trying to go. Yeah, that's the most simplistic thing. So StackSet really helps you to it really helps you to scale up your CloudFormation deployments using very as simple as doing a single operation. So that's kind of the long spiel of what is StackSet. Just it's that CloudFormation at scale.
I love that because a lot of people, I think, when they're first getting started with AWS, they don't realize you're probably going to have more than one AWS account, right? And when that kind of dawns on them, they start going, well, wait a minute, how am I going to manage this, right? I know how to manage one account. I know how to manage, infrastructure in one account.
Mm-hmm.
It's sometimes, even when you're just getting started with AWS, difficult to plan on how to manage stuff across regions in one account, let alone multi-regions and multi-accounts, So anytime I hear about any tools we've got that helps with multi-account management, because eventually, I'm talking to you, anybody who's new to AWS, eventually you will have to have more than one account, even if it's just the separation between your production account and your development account. But also, Chad is on fire today, by the way. I don't know if you saw Chad's comment. CloudFormation keeps guys like AM from bringing down the environment. Which, guess what? Click on it. That's what saves. But no, I could still take down the environment with CloudFormation.
Of course.
Of course you could.
Don't tell me like what restricts my power. Like, no way. You
No,
can't keep me out of there. Go ahead.
AM, that's 1,000% true. When I was very first getting started in AWS, in cloud in general, I was trying to set up a production Kubernetes cluster and a development Kubernetes cluster for 2 different clients. And I was doing it manually through the console. I didn't even know what AAC was. This is very beginning. And I was like, this is taking forever. Like, I am clicking through everything. I am waiting for all this stuff to spin up. And I was like, there's got to be a better way. And like, I have to make sure that they're matching. I was like, this just doesn't seem right. And then, when I found out, I was like, oh yeah, I can just make a formation template and then go boom, boom, boom. And
James, I just imagine you holding like too many Kubernetes clusters in your hands. I can't hold all these Kubernetes clusters. There's got to be a better way.
I could just do a commercial about it. Like, I don't know what to do. Yeah. Anyway, that was my story. It's 1,000% true. Like,
now
I lived it.
That, and now you've got a solution. StackSets.
StackSets.
All right, so Parasite, today we're talking about so as you run a stack set across multiple accounts, right? Mm-hmm. Which you outlined for us so well just a few moments ago. That's the purpose of stack sets, or one of the purposes of stack sets. What was the cause of this feature being developed? What happened to make it like, hey, we need to focus on this and fix this? Because it sounds like people will move accounts into different states, and suspended is one of those, right? Can you tell us a little bit about why people make suspended accounts and how that interacts with stack sets before this feature?
Oh yeah, so this was, I wouldn't say like this feature was more of a fix. It's more of an enhancement into the customer experience. But the main question here is like, why do customers have suspended account, right? There are many reasons for that. So sometimes one of the popular best practices that AWS has when it comes to managing your organization unit, we do recommend that you have a suspended OU, right? And in those particular organization unit, you might have like certain sandbox accounts where an employee might have left the organization, and you just want to like delete that account and put it there. Sometimes also what happens is there are also like seasonal workloads, right? You do not perhaps need all of your accounts across the whole year, right? And then those kind of like seasonal fluctuations also, you get to see a bunch of like suspended accounts. One of the ones that I remember at top of my mind from my customer is around like certain accounts might get compromised and they might want to take it to a suspended state just to monitor and like understand what has really happened before making it active again. So there are like many of those like out of the edge cases where customers do, when you're like a large enterprise, you have like hundreds and thousands of accounts, you do tend to like take a bunch of them suspended like on a daily basis, right? But coming to this feature, like why did we have it, right? Like, and then what was the intent out of it? So there were a couple of folds around it, right? One was purely based on the fact on current experience. So prior to this launch, what used to happen is that StackSets will try to deploy that stack, the CloudFormation stack, in accounts that were suspended. So that from a very operational point of view, it used to take a lot of time for the engine. So if you, let's say, had 100 accounts, out of which 50 are suspended, we will go and try to deploy it in 50 of those and then say that, hey, this has failed because of this suspended, right? So one aspect that we were able to fix really quickly was to improve that whole deployment speed, right, of your stack set operation, right, by simply understanding, hey, these are the accounts that are suspended, let's just skip them at the first go. The secondary benefit from all of this was not just a speed element, is that customer today, when they're deploying StackSets, we have like certain knobs, right? And one of the knobs is failure tolerance, right? So one of the knobs is failure tolerance, where customers can say that, hey, for a given StackSet deployment, if the number of fail in stack instances cross a particular threshold, very user-defined threshold, right? If it crosses a particular threshold, let us stop that StackSet operation and roll it back. It could be a rollback, or it could just be a pause there, and then we can investigate, right? What we began to see from our customers is that when it comes to these failed stack instances, there could be multiple reasons. One of them could be, hey, I already have a CloudFormation stack in that account, so you cannot deploy it, right? Another could be, hey, these resources that you're trying to deploy, this account does not have the permissions, right, for those kind of deployments. So that is another failure, right? But then start coming all these edge cases, right, where accounts are suspended, and that really does not truly add value to the fail concept in the customer's mind, right? But they still are populated as like failed stack instances. So customers really did not have the fine granularity of turning that knob in a way where they would feel that control, right? And what was happening is what the customers really wanted to see were actual failed stack instances because of a more like an under like a proper root cause than maybe perhaps suspended. So that is why they were like these multiple things that we had, right? One is for speed, and the other one was giving customers better control over the failure tolerance. That is one of the inherent features of StackSets. So yeah, that's why we launched this feature. We had a lot of good customer feedback on this. Especially if you're a large enterprise who has like hundreds and thousands of accounts. And you're doing like daily StackSet deployment where you're like bootstrapping new accounts, baselining them with some governance policy, right? It takes a lot. And this is where we have received good feedback, and I'm really excited to show the demo today.
All right. And with that cue, I love that you queued us up there.
I was going to say that was perfect.
Yeah.
That was...
I do want to remind the audience too. Parashot's here. He's the guy you want to talk to if you've got CloudFormation wish list items. Get them in chat. Put them in there. We've also Rohin's still in the background here too. So if you've got OpenSearch wish list items, get those in chat as well. You've got unfettered access right now to these two wonderful PMs. So if you are passionate about these services and you want some things, let them know, because this is how features like the one we're talking about today get developed. All right, Parashot, you ready for demo? It looks like, let's see, are you switched over yet? There we go.
Over. Yes.
Let me pull up your screen. Here we are. Okay, so we're going to see this in action, right?
That is correct. Can you all see my screen before I begin?
We're good.
All right, perfect, cool. So for today's demo, what I've done is I've kind of like already had like a pre-setup before we entered the demo. So what I have done is I created like an AWS organization where inside this AWS organization, I've created an organization unit, which already has about 6 accounts. What I've done behind the scene is I've kind of suspended a few of these accounts. So when we see this particular feature roll out in live, you will get to actually feel that suspension state when the deployment's happening. So that's kind of like the background what we have today. We have an AWS organization unit where we have 6 accounts, out of which 3 are like suspended. And what I'll do before I move on to the next piece is I'll just copy this OUID, right? And then from here, let us go to CloudFormation. So as part of today's demo, what I'm planning to do is I'm planning to create a StackSet. And I'm planning to use the service manage version of StackSet. We'll get into what does the service manage and self-manage means and what's the difference between that. But before I do that, let us just look at the template that we are planning to deploy today. So on the other screen, what I have is I have a very simple CloudFormation template where we are trying to deploy a DynamoDB resource. And this particular template has certain parameters. Parameters, for somebody who's first like starting out, what it means is that these are like inputs that you can allow your customers to have. And you can like have like default values for parameters. These are values that you can change while creating or updating your stack or StackSets. But for today's purpose, like I've mostly pre-filled most of these parameters. But just looking at the template, we have some outputs that come out. And this is kind of a fairly simple template with a single resource. So what I will do is I'm going to go back to my previous screen around create StackSets. And here for today's demo, we are using the service manage. If you are wondering what is the difference between a service and a self-manage, a simple mental model to think about is that if I want to target my AWS organization or some organization unit within my AWS organization, then service manage is the best place to do. With the self-manage, what happens is that you as a customer, when you work with our tool, you will have to create these permission models fairly manually and go to those target accounts, create an IAM role. We have like an entire user guide where we talk about how to set up your StackSets using the service manage, but with the the self-manage. But with the service manage, what we have is a very one-click kind of an experience where you just give the you activate the organization access through your management account, and that's pretty much it. And then you can start deploying your StackSet to your organization units, your accounts within an organization unit, or the entire AWS organization that you have. So back to the demo. If you look at the template piece, I'll just quickly upload the template. So I have this template fairly ready. I can show us in the designer, like if for people who have for folks who have never seen this feature, we have a pretty nifty feature when you upload your CloudFormation stack and you want to really visualize what is happening, how they're connected. It's a pretty useful tool. So as you can see, when I just uploaded the stack, it just has a simple DynamoDB table with a bunch of parameters and all of that. Let me go back.
I'll point out too for people watching. Obviously, Perjat's using JSON as his choice. You can also use YAML to write CloudFormation templates.
Oh yeah, this one I just directly downloaded from our user guide. If you just go to the CloudFormation user guide or even just Google CloudFormation template, you'll see a bunch of these that are easily accessible. Not just something very simple as single resource, but very complex stuff as well, where you're trying to deploy an EC2 with some security group, and you want to work around with those resources. So we have those out of the box templates that customers can use. Back to the demo. So what I did in the previous step is I chose my template, and now I'm just going to name it AWS On Air demo. This is my StackSet name. I'm just going to put some sample text just as part of the description. Going back to the previous segment around parameters, this is where you get to see that customers actually have the ability to change the parameters and put new values beyond whatever is defaultly defined as part of your template, right? So I'll just put some text over here. And in this section, one of the things that I do want to do a call out is in the execution configuration. And what that means is, let's say you have a particular stack set, right? You can run a bunch of operation on the same stack set. Operations such as, hey, this stack set I want to deploy in these target accounts, and then I want to run a separate operation where I'm trying to delete certain stack instances from a different OU, right? And there's the difference between the inactive and active is that if you're clicking on active, and when you can configure that stack set, what stack set would do is it would perform non-conflicting operations, right? So an example of this is, let's say I have an OU ID, an organization unit 1 and an organization unit 2. Now I'm trying to create stack instances for this OU1, but at the same time, I'm also trying to delete, which should be a separate operation. Since these two are not really conflicting because your accounts in one OU are different from the other one, StackSets will kind of do all of this parallelly, right? However, in the inactive one, what it would happen is that StackSet would do OU, it'll be like a FIFO, right? First in, first out kind of a thing. Whichever operation you ran first, that will get executed, and then followed by a second operation, and so on and so forth. Just giving customers more of that flexibility in terms of your execution. Before today, since we're just doing a simple StackSet operation, I'm just going to choose inactive. Coming to the deployment option, this is where we get to see the power of the service managed StackSet, right? Here, I can directly deploy the StackSet, which is a DynamoDB, to my entire organization, or I can, of course, select a particular OU ID, right? And if I have a bunch of child OU, parent OU, I can do all of that. There is also an element of called account filter types. So we launched this feature a couple of I think sometimes earlier last year. We have an entire demo on AWS On Air on particularly this feature. So if you want to learn more about that, please go there. Before I, of course, move to the deployments factor, I do want to focus on this auto deployment option. And this is one of the biggest power of the service managed StackSet, right? So as service managed StackSet, you're not only targeting your deployment to an organization unit, but you also have a feature called automatic deployment, or as I like to call it, auto deploy, right? So auto deploy, what it really does is, let's say I have a bootstrapping or a baselining kind of a stack set where I am trying to deploy certain policies like an IAM role and all of that. And what I want is, anytime a new account is added to a particular organization unit, I want StackSet to go and auto deploy that particular StackSet configuration directly to this account without me having to go manually and do all of that, right? And that's what automatic deployment or auto deploy as a feature does for you, right? So if I chose, let's say, activate, anytime a new account is added to that particular organization unit, StackSet will deploy this particular DynamoDB on the go, right? And you don't have to really do it manually, and you don't have to worry about it. The other piece that is something we recently added was around your retain and delete stack. And this kind of moves across the way customers are working with organization unit. So let's say if you had a stack and you targeted to a particular OU, and tomorrow you moved an account from one particular organization to another organization unit, what should be the behavior that StackSet should do? Should StackSet go and delete that stack when you're moving that account from one OU to another OU? Or should we retain that stack, right? And we're providing customers that level of granularity on that piece.
That's cool. That's really cool. We had 2 questions from chat really quickly. Not necessarily entirely related to what we're talking about right now in CloudFormation. One was an alternative tool to log into the cloud environment other than the console. You got CLI, you got SDKs. You can utilize Cloud9 and use the CLI directly there. You can use Cloud Shell. There are a couple. It depends on what you're trying to do, I'd say. And then the other about this is there a heavy graphic card requirement for this process to run a CloudFormation template? No, not for you as the user.
No, yeah, it's all happening in the cloud. Nothing is there in your own system.
That's right.
Yeah, but the first question I would also stretch out that point is not only you have like the CLI and the SDK.
Yeah.
Also, you can use abstractions that we build on top of CloudFormation, such as CDK, right?
Yeah.
So if you like writing your template in Python or TypeScript, you can do that using CDK. And one short plug here is that we are coming up with an L2 StackSet construct for CDK, and there is like an entire public roadmap where we're trying to work with that team and get that done. So
interesting.
Yeah, be on a lookout for that particular feature, because that we believe like that sort of partnership will really help our CDK customers as well as any sort of like cloud enthusiast.
I'll plug too, since you're throwing in a plug. We've talked a lot about constructs, L1, L2 constructs for the CDK. On Developer Innovation Day that we did just a few months ago. So if you just type into your favorite search engine, AWS Developer Innovation Day, you'll be able to find those segments that we did. We talked with a lot of the CDK people. We talked with one of the people who actually manages a lot of the pull requests from the community in CDK, which is really cool segment. And you can learn all about what those constructs and the things that Parajat is talking about in the CDK are all about. So go check that out. Anyway, back to your demo. Sorry, Parajat.
Back to the demo. So yeah, that's kind of like the end. Like we will now go to the deployment piece, right? So I selected one region just for simplicity. These deployment option, again, please do read the user guide. We kind of like explain what is concurrency, and this is the failure tolerance that I was talking about, where I can say that, hey, if let's say 2 stack instances fail, right? I want this deployment to stop. Or if I am doing for like hundreds or thousands of accounts, I can choose any number right here. And similarly, I can do it at a whole percentage level if that is something that's helpful. Region concurrency, this is a feature that I really like. Is let's say if you have an account, right, and you're deploying it, and this account is available in like 10 regions, right? What should StackSet do when deploying this particular stack set into that account with so many regions, right? And region concurrency helps you fine tune that, right? You want to do it sequentially because you might want to control the blast radius. You want to do it for a region that's kind of smaller and then move on to a bigger region, or you can do it parallelly, right? Maybe it's more of a baselining stack set that does not have a real implication in terms of like the impact. And that's kind of like the choice that the customer has when choosing some deployment options. This particular page is just like, it's a refresh of like, hey, these are the choices that you have made. Just review it. And then once you're done, you just have to click submit. And the work really starts, right? Let me quickly refresh. Let's see. Okay. So here I have a StackSet operation, and this operation is currently running. And you can see that as part of this operation, this is actually a new feature, like not a new feature, but some improvements that we made to the console. So when you click on it today, as when you're looking at like your StackSet operation itself, you can just click on this particular piece and see where that operation, which accounts it's running, right? And this goes back to the piece of like inactive and active portion. So if I could have multiple StackSet operations running, right? And I want to see like which are accounts, what is happening, and all of that information I really get on the fly through the console. Now coming to the stack instances piece, this is where things get a bit interesting. We get to see that few of the accounts, the ones that were suspended, StackSets, as part of like our detailed status, of course, we're adding a new status, but we have essentially skipped those suspended accounts. And what you will see as in a visual way is that StackSets will only try to run for the ones that are available. So at the first go itself, we not only skipped all these accounts, they will not count as failed stack instances. But at the same time, it's going to still happen very fast. So even in this conversation of 2 to 3 minutes, right, you see all of your deployments of your DynamoDB is done, right? And that's kind of like what the main power is. It's both about speed as well as enhancement of the experience. And I can, of course, try to delete the stack set, and you'll have like fairly the same kind of an experience. So if I, let's say, delete stacks from my stack set, right? Here I can incorporate the same OUID that I had created. I can add all my regions, and then A fascinating feature here is you might want to sometimes retain the stack, but delete the StackSet connection with that. And that's kind of a feature that you have depending on your particular use case. But yeah, if I kind of delete it, you will go back and see there's another operation. So again, you can have multiple operations and you can see what's happening behind the scene here, right? In this delete one, not only you get to see like a bunch of them are running, but when we come to the stack instances space, you can see that things will happen very quickly, right? Like things will get deleted very quickly. So yeah, as you wait for this to happen, any questions?
So, I wanted to highlight another thing that I know exists in StackSets too, that I learned about while talking with you in the prep for this session. I thought was really cool. It's kind of similar and tangentially related, right? So it'll automatically skip these suspended accounts, but let's say I've got a list of accounts that I know that I don't want to run, a StackSet against. Is there any way in StackSets to keep a list of things of accounts rather to skip while deploying StackSets?
So we do have, let's say, now I'm just going to do the add stack piece again, right? Like walking us back through the same process. So when we do this, right, first of all, when you, let's say you have this option called deployment target, right? In this, when you click on the deploy to organization unit, the best piece is not just service manage, but in self-manage also, we have the same feature. But what you can do is you can use the account filter type feature, right? So I can say that here is my organization unit, but I can add another OU, right? And I can say that only the differences, right? So if there is an intersection, right? So if you have a parent OU, a child OU, and all of that, I want the intersection, the difference, or the union, right? And then a lot of ways how customers are really working with this is that they might have a list of accounts that they just want to skip, right? And again, now it has become a native functionality, but it's not just about skipping, right? It's not about just skipping suspended accounts. It could be some other reason why you're skipping these accounts, right? Because maybe that account already has these resources and you don't want to like retry a deployment and have that failure, right? The account filter type feature helps you do that, helps you to get more granular experience when it comes to maybe deploying to an OU. And then instead of deploying the whole OU, I want to deploy the section of that organization unit.
You got some discrete mathematics in here. I love it. You got some stats in there.
With some visual stuff as well. So you get to see what's really happening.
I'm just showing off that I took a class once in college called discrete mathematics. I couldn't tell you anything about it, but I know that those union, intersection, and difference were a part of it. So just got to get my money's worth,
Of course.
So we mentioned this at the beginning, kind of. When you went to that area of the console that said suspended and skipped or whatever, what had happened before? It would just say failed or rollback, or that's what it would have done previously?
Yes. So previously, instead of like if I go back to this one, right, just an example. I think this one's already, if I refresh, it should be, So instead of the status being succeeded, right, it would have come as failed, right? And this is something you would have seen in your stack instance space. And what that means is, sorry for that.
That's okay. That's how you know we're live. Time call.
I was not preparing for that. But no, back to the question there, right? Is these would have come not only as failed, and that's not just a piece of tag, but that tag is associated to your failure tolerance. So let's say in the example that we had done, right, you had 6 tags, you had 6 accounts where you targeted it, and your failure tolerance, let's say, was 50%. That says that if 50% of my deployments fail, I want to stop. In this example, your StackSet operation would have actually stopped, right? Because you would have had those suspended account as failed stack instances or failed stack deployments. And here, so there's not only like the element of like just skipping the account for performance improvements, but also giving better control over the failure tolerance, right? When you as a customer defining your failure tolerance, suspended account should not be one of those reasons. At least that's what our customers have given active feedback on.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so just to break it down real quick, say I had 10 accounts. My failure tolerance is 30%.
We're doing some discrete mathematics here now.
Sort of. I just want to be really clear on this. I have 10 accounts, 3 are suspended, and I deploy to all, and my tolerance is 50%. right?
Mhm.
So theoretically, that means 7 should, be actually rolled out to. It doesn't count those suspended ones as failures, correct?
Not anymore.
Yes, not anymore.
Got it. That's
Yeah.
But it
perfect.
did.
That's great. Yeah.
So that's the improvement for sure. Is because let's say you had those 3 that were suspended, and
That'd be 30% right there.
yeah, you're already at
Yeah.
30%, and then if you get any others,
Yeah.
you're getting closer and closer to your fault tolerance level, and that's going to trigger a rollback across all. And you may not want that, obviously, with just because of the suspension of these accounts.
Yeah.
You're already launching. So then you would also have to take into account, like, oh, well, if I know that, 30% of them are going to fail, like, I better up the fault tolerance level if I don't want it. But you don't have to do any of that anymore because Parashot fixed it for you.
He did it all by himself.
Just
all by
for-
myself.
Yeah, I'm sure your team will love that when they watch this later.
Oh no, I'm really fortunate for like the StackSet engineering team. Like we have been working extremely hard like to launch a bunch of features. So this year we have launched like a few features. Please
That's why
do
we
look-
talk to you so much, Parashot.
Yeah. But back to the main thing, right? With the failure tolerance piece. As a customer, when I'm deploying my StackSet, I might not have the full understanding of how many accounts are suspended, right, in my AWS organization. More so, accounts can be suspended like when the deployment's happening. A lot of things, right? Like so, having an exact estimation of your suspended account, customers found it very tricky, right? Like what people wanted to know was like, okay, if there's a failed deployment or a failed stack instance, what is a more tangible reason that is more under my control, right? Rather than like a suspended account and having an accountability of that. So there were a lot of lenses to this feature when we are like developing it from scratch and like enhancing like what the current experience is.
Very nice. All right, Parashot, I'm so sorry to do this to you, but we are short on time. Is there anything else that you want to leave the audience with?
Not as of today, but no, thank you for having us on the show. Please do check out this feature. We do have like, when I say call to action, we do have like an AWS blog. There is CloudFormation Twitter. If you're not following us on there, please do follow us there on CloudFormation Twitter. And we do publish all of these, like what's news, all of the new workshops that we are launching, as well as any sort of like talks that we're having, right? Those are again published on the CloudFormation Twitter, and it's a good way for us, for anybody to reach out to us. Just send us a tweet, and we are definitely looking at that.
I love it. Thank you, as always, for joining us, Parashot. I appreciate it, and I know I'll see you again soon.